Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of my Honors Activism Project. So this is going to be one episode of its own, but the next episode following it will be somewhat related. This episode specifically will be following on diversity rights and affirmative action and what it is, the pros and cons of it, and honestly what could be done better about it. We will also obviously within all this be talking about probably more current racial movements that have been occurring. So to start off with, what is affirmative action? So again, dictionary definitions, official definitions. Affirmative action is a set of policies that were set by the government that businesses and schools and government locations follow, where a certain groups of people will be hired to, in a way, sort of fill a diversity quota. It's to diversify the work world, to make sure everything's more fair, and that we have equal representation of every race. Diversity rights, when talking about that, specifically in my case, the way I'm defining it for this video, is sort of the laws and support that the government has made or done to help those certain groups. So that would be the definitions that we're specifically using for this video. And of course, obviously, we'll be mentioning some of the more recent things, a little bit about BLM and the American movement and, Latino movements, especially. So that'll be going on. The pros and cons of this. The pros and cons of these kind of situations where we have these policies set is it creates a situation, in the workplace specifically, it does create a little problem where sometimes because they have to hire people of certain groups, someone who may have better qualifications will not be hired because they aren't of that certain group, which is one part of it. Another part of it is also just the fact that it, in a sense, creates more division than it really does create fairness. Now, I know some people are going to jump at me like, oh my god, what are you saying? Hear me out. Basically, we are using these policies to force places to educate, to teach, to take on people of different groups. Now, it is true that we should diversify places and that we should have equal representation. On the other hand, though, by forcing certain stuff on people, it not only makes people possibly more hostile towards that group, it may make that group become more hostile towards the other groups as well. And so suddenly there's this hostility consistently between groups. Which, although I know some people are like, affirmative action is great, that's one of the reasons it may not be the greatest idea to keep on with. And yes, I understand there are certain groups that struggle more. On the other hand, we don't want a consistent hostility that is caused by enforcing this. Another issue with more diversity rights, privileges, we have a lot of programs for people of different groups. Welfare programs, education programs. When it comes to the education world, especially, this goes into the next video a little bit. So for this, I'll just focus on scholarships the most and other resources in college. Is if you look, when you're looking for scholarships, when you're looking for educational help, you will see so much educational help if you're a specific group of people. There's a huge amount of help for Hispanics. You will see advertisements for helping African Americans. You'll see advertisements for helping Asian Americans. And although that's nice in some ways, In other ways, that is a disadvantage to people that are not of those groups. And also another thing is, and this is something you would have a hard time searching up, this is more of a personal experience thing from being a biracial kid, they make it with those programs as well that they have to suddenly create a system where they have to figure out what percentage of that race you can be to apply. And that can be a really unfair system. We have so many mixed people today, so many biracial people today, that it's really hard to continue those programs because of the fact that some of those people can sign up, and then there's this fight about their identification of ethnicity, per se, of their race identification. And honestly, it sort of causes an inner issue within the person most of the time of this consistent identity crisis. Not always, but sometimes. So that's another pro-con situation right there. Another thing to note when it comes to diversity issues is the amount of media coverage. Now, I know a lot of you have heard about, white girl missing syndrome, whatever else you call it. And the thing with that is there are many issues within all the groups, there are many issues overall, but sometimes certain people get more media coverage or more attention or more resources based on the color of their skin. And it's not only white people, for those of you who think I'm referring only to the white girl syndrome. It's also other programs where they specifically are more helpful to certain people of color, certain colors. So those are a majority of the pros and cons. As I said, more of the education specific stuff I would like to do more so in my next video. More workplace stuff, as I said, hostility, you may not get a person with the same amount of skills. You also may have less progress because they don't have those amount of skills. And there's just a lot of issues overall. It's a very messy issue to talk about diversity rights, affirmative action. Another, going into solutions and things that can be done, things that should be considered, and those kind of conversations, I think another thing that needs to be accounted for is just accountability in general. We see a lot of groups today, and all of them are fighting for their own thing. And they don't, not all of them, but some of them do not think of accountability in their own race. Again, no, that's controversial, but it's the reality of if we will ever solve this race problem, we need to hold ourselves accountable. Whatever race we are, we need to hold our own race accountable and solve our own issues, as well as trying to speak with the others, because you can't just not solve your own issues, but then try to tell everyone else, oh, you need to stop being racist, you need to solve your own issues, da-da-da-da-da. No. There needs to be an accountability there on every party. Another thing is to, and this is where things get tricky, understand with peaceful protests, things have been going on recently, and they've been talking about borderlines between peaceful protests and riots, and again, understand this is a tricky topic. People talk about BLM, and it's like there's some good to it, there's some bad to it, there's a little bit of everything. And it's one of those things where we need to also look more into issues and their causes before doing anything else. one of the things with BLM, again, I know this will be a controversial take, is many people didn't fully read the stories, didn't fully check the backgrounds of some of these people. Some people misunderstood the movement, and so suddenly you have all this misinformation spreading about it. You got some people who showed up purposely to do riots. You had some people with good intentions. Some people were trying to just get money out of this. And so it really lost what it may have started to be. It may have started as something good, but it just completely lost it very quickly over time. And what made it worse is that outside people started adding on to it. And they didn't understand what was going on, but they just kept passing on the information, not actually reading or analyzing or looking, what are the causes? Why is this happening? What's true? What's not? What created the conditions for this situation? And so that's another thing that needs to be looked at when you're looking at these kind of movements. We also, this is going to be hard. We also need to, on top of looking at causes, obviously, this goes straight into the causes, honestly, the Asian American movement. I understand that there has been some hate towards Asian Americans. There absolutely has been. On the other hand, with this movement, although it is true they're trying self-discrimination, some of them may be taking it in a direction they shouldn't. Some of them may be going a little too extreme, blaming too many people, blaming certain groups or people without fully looking at it, And that's a sad point, is with all this hostility going on, because of the fact that this was never taken care of properly, we're just starting to outright blame certain groups or other groups and this group and that group, instead of really looking at the facts and sitting down and looking at the causes and the effects and how to change all of this. And then when it comes to affirmative action, it either needs to be rewritten in a format where it does not create such a hostile environment between all groups, or it needs to be abolished, which is hard to hear, but the reason I say that is because the reality is the policies in it are making a lot of the hostility. They're passing around a lot of lies. They're passing around a lot of the stereotypes. A lot of the misconceptions going around come from that. And so we either need to sit down and rewrite this whole thing and think everything through and start holding each other accountable for things and solving problems correctly and truly reforming, or we need to abolish it and learn on our own. Plus, to be honest, along with abolishing it, racism isn't as high per se today. It's not at the same way it was in the past. I'm not saying it's not there. It is still there somewhat, but it is not taken care of as horribly. There's very few people who are really racist, and those people, even then, do not even take things as radical as people did in the past. We've improved a lot, and we just, maybe some of it, a little bit, was affirmative action, but most of that was just, we've all, for at least a good period of time, we were all really communicating and looking at the problems and, really reforming. And we just sort of did that on our own. And we can still do that. But those are just some recommendations, some opinions. And again, this is just talking outward. This is just opinions. This is just observations. I'm not racist. Those of you who are going to go scream that, I'm never been racist. It's just pointing out some of the issues with this whole diversity situation we have going on in the world right now that really were not done properly. And now the effects are hurting us so much. But I hope from this video that you all learned a bit more about affirmative action, diversity rights. I hope my message was very clear. Hopefully you understand where this is coming from, you understand the pros and cons, and that you will really think about this before lashing out or acting or whatever you choose to do with this information. But thanks for watching. This has been episode 3, and I will see you guys next time for episode 4 of the Honors Activism Project. Bye.